The Cultist, a Power Masks and Capes novelette by Tao Wong, performed by P.J. Morgan. I knew better, but I did it anyway. What can I say? I've always been a weak man. When I first gained my powers, I was 38 and a loser. Sure, I had a decent job, managing logistics for a multinational company, but it wasn't an important job. All I did was make sure the containers from one factory made it to another. Yes, it was both more and significantly less complicated than that. But compared to someone like the Paragon or the Vigilante, capes who had saved the world over and over again, loser. It's hard, living in a world where gods, in all but name, walk the earth. Where celebrities who are famous for nothing more than being famous and pretty, or having a cool, or different, power exist. Where the rich flaunt their wealth, the con men tell you how small you are, and the religious rant about how we're all going to hell. Where meteors rain down upon you because some damn alien you've never heard of got upset because one of your capes got into his face. Where Johnny down the street gets recruited during the third All Powers Act. Hard not to feel small, not to feel insignificant. Why do you think most people get on drugs, drink themselves silly, or spend days and nights scrolling social media? Why groupies for the powers, in all their forms, emerge, even amongst people we might think have it all? Hard, and it takes a big man not to feel down. So you understand why, when I felt the first inkling of my power coming alive, I chose to exploit it? Without training, without testing, just straight into the deep end. A fool's choice, but I was a fool. Still am. But I'm getting ahead of myself. It started with a girl. Not a pretty one or a powerful one, or even one who caught my eye, but a child. Mints. Thin mints. A half-dozen boxes. They were my favorite kind, really. Now I can't even look at them. The boxes were meant for 𝗪𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂, said with a fake-as-her-tits French accent. She was my upstairs neighbor in the condo building, and had accosted the Power Scouts before they made it to my floor when she spotted them on the way up. She'd bought them out of all their Thin Mints, because she could, and promised payment later. I wanted them for myself, wanted something to go my way that day. So I said so. And for the first time ever, I got what I wanted, even when it was wrong. The kid handed over the mints and took my money and left, all the happier for having been paid twice. Shut up, 𝗪𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂. That's what I told her when she came to complain. She did, of course. Why don't you go do your damn fitness aerobics class again? Your ass is getting fat. It wasn't, but she left. And that damn application I could always hear through the thin floor joists that separated us had right away. The all-too-cheery voice, telling them to pick up their feet and put some energy into it, still haunts my dreams. I probably should have realized the problems then. I probably should have stopped. But I wielded my power again the next day, and the day after, testing the feel of my power flexing itself, growing as it worked on others. A thrill ran through me with each flexing of ability, each time someone did what I wanted without questioning, without protesting. Small uses. An extra donut with my coffee from the barista down the street. No harm done, just a chain store that wouldn't even notice the unrung purchase. A nudge to a bigger man there, watching him walk into the slush pile of leaves and melted snow as autumn turned to winter, because he wasn't about to shift course. He was the bigger man, right? You know how they are, and how annoying it can be to give way. Getting my documents approved before the others by the director, so I wouldn't have to wait around like the rest of the peons, late into the night, when he got back from golf. Each time, that frisson of energy, that pulling sensation as my power worked. I figured out what was happening easily enough. Understood that this wasn't coincidence, but me using a power. Maybe others can mistake their powers for something else. Coincidence, fate, maybe a burst of adrenaline or a natural hardening. Some never even notice they have powers till they're much older. The man who glowed like a nightlight, but only when he was asleep, famously being outed by his new boyfriend. The mechanic on that racing team, whose ability to reduce the frictional coefficient of lubricants got the team disqualified for unauthorized use of powers. The girl with 25/20 vision, who just hadn't realized no one else could see as well as she did. Small things, trivial powers. In another time, another place, they might be called freaks, anomalies. Not for me. Not the way my power made me feel. Not the way it let me feel my victim's emotions. But I should probably tell you what my power really is, shouldn't I? The government, the U.S. government, classifies my power as one of the restricted kinds by law. Mental or social manipulation with a power rating of a minimum of 3 on the 𝒂𝒂𝒊𝒂 combined power scale. Mine specifically is a linked internal-external projected power at a rating of 8. Quite the mouthful, isn't it? Probably doesn't tell you much at all, unless you're a powers groupie, or read government documents for fun. Here's what it does, in simple terms. I manipulate the emotions and thoughts of individuals around me. I project my needs to them, verbally, as you might have guessed, and subconsciously alter their feelings and mental processes, such that they seek to give me what I want. Most of what I do is on the subconscious level, rather than the direct manipulation of thoughts. No surprise, this is partly why they call me the Cultist these days. I'm not a mind controller like Overlord, or even a benign influencer like the Red Siren and her singing. She is, by the way, a social manipulator with a power rating of 17, sometimes 19 in periods of high stress. That means she can influence large crowds and even individuals over electronic surveillance and digital channeling. If it weren't for the fact that her manipulation only goes toward positive emotions, she would be considered a real threat. Even then, if you look closely, you'll always see at least 2 government agents watching her at all times during mass concerts, and a single one otherwise. Those agents are either nullers themselves, or have Morris tech to stop her ability. The government doesn't like those of us with the power to alter their voters' minds, running around free and clear. Not unless you work for them. Oh, me? Nah. Don't get me wrong, I've had the offers. They always come if you're above a certain registered power level. And I'm not morally opposed to the money or influence. But the kind of controls they want, the way they follow you around, tag you, and watch, not for me. A slave in fine quarters is still a slave. Sorry, I can see you're getting bored. You wanted to know about my first attempt at heroics, right? Yeah, why not? We're here to talk about my failures anyway. They called him the Hippo. The press, you people, that is. I don't think he actually had a villain name when he started. Just another victim of Mutagen 13. You call us villains, but when a corporation spends decades dumping, on purpose, billions of tons of a chemical mutagen that can accelerate the presentation of a power, you let them get away with it, with nothing more than a fine and some light sentencing for lower managers. Don't give me that bullshit that it was never proven. I could prove it tomorrow if your courts hadn't ruled that power-enforced or acquired confessions are inadmissible. Just because your courts and politicians were bought out doesn't mean we don't know what we know. Anyway, they had much as admitted it when they revealed the more stable method to create a series of mutations barely 3 years later. Compound X, promising to give people powers, real powers, with minimal side effects and with an 85% degree of accuracy. Still no promise of what exactly you'd get beyond broad parameters. And no power that has come out of those trials has ever breached level 8. No wonder power swim parties down the Colorado River and in the cordoned lakes are still a thing. No wonder Cape Maker and Mask Origin are still the hottest selling drugs. Why settle for being less when you could be champion? Or at least close enough. No one ever talks about the gators, the folk, or the other less desirable mutations. Sorry, where were we? Right, Hippo. He and 3 of his buddies had hit a jewelry store and were running for it. Stupidly, they hadn't checked what running away with a mask nicknamed Hippo would do to their vehicle's top speed. Let me be clear. The answer is nothing good. They had no cornering abilities at all. Swung out like a football field-long trailer, what with Hippo in the back of the truck. Ended up putting the entire thing into the side of another vehicle, popping the back tire and jamming themselves tight, such that they couldn't move before they got hit by another car. All of that meant they were running down Henderson Ave, jewelry bags clutched in their hands, as if White Hood was after their tails and had his noose in his hand. They ran as far and as fast as possible, right into me as I was stepping out of a grocery store, clutching a treat for the night. Ice cream. Cookies and cream. Get your head out of the gutter. I have never used my power in that way. Ever. When the first thug raised a gun at me, in surprise, I cried out a command automatically. Drop it. It worked. Well enough that I used it on the next thug who looked at me. Telling them to hold and stop was a little more considered. It was the first time someone pushed against my commands. Hard. I didn't take too well to that. When Hippo ran at me, I was a little distracted. When I tried to use my power against him and failed, I admit I was really surprised. You know, of course, because it's your job. But I didn't. Not as though I was a powers groupie, right? You know that powers have an inherent defense against other powers. Well, I didn't. Worse was the punch he leveled against me. I must admit, I'm still grateful that he chose to contain his strength. Tapped me gently even with all the strength that he actually had. Otherwise, my story would have ended quite differently. It's too bad I never had a chance to thank him in person. He was killed by the vulgar knight 3 years later. Damn vigilantes. Anyway, he hit me. I flew through the store window and woke up in cuffs. 5 years in jail. Minimum sentence for power-enabled crime. It was decided that I was a vigilante, that stopping the criminals was a criminal act, even if everything I had done was mostly reflexive in self-defense. All for a tub of ice cream and trying to stop real criminals. You can see why I never again tried to do the right thing. Well, outside the 𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂 either. 5 years in a maximum security prison, a powers prison, without access to my ability, but at the mercy of some of the most violent and dumb criminals, was an educational period. No early parole either, not for an empath like me. By the time I came out, I was a changed man. I won't talk about my time in prison. You have access to the records. There's nothing I want to add. It was a dark time, but most prison sentences are. I'd rather talk about what happened after, because that has more to do with who I became. The fact that I was in prison is sufficient for our purposes. There aren't many options for a criminal power when you leave prison, especially if you aren't a body. At least they can work construction, mining, demolition. Anything where being strong, tough, and hard to hurt is a prized asset. That's why most success stories of rehabilitated powers are bodies. The rest of us, they restrict how we use our powers, even demand that we don't wield them at all when they can get away with it. Sure, numerous human rights cases are fighting that. Some countries, Denmark, Mozambique, Ecuador, have made such laws and restrictions illegal. But most countries are still fighting the legal cases, or even ratifying the restrictions into law. Drug us, use dampener fields, even put us on surveillance. What kind of life is that? What kind of life can we have? But people are more intent on punishing than rehabilitating. More intent on control of the dangerous, scary, powered individual. Even if that power might be a secondary sense that can help someone now legally blind navigate the world. Because hey, maybe you shouldn't have mutated that overhanging brow that cuts off most of your vision and scared the children with your sharp teeth, eh? Civilians. Ignorant, hateful fools, one and all. No surprise so many turn to being a mask after a trip through the prison system. Disappear into the villain underground the moment they can. Most never surface. There's a lot of work out there supporting masks and more prosaic criminal activities. Bookkeepers to keep proper track of expenses and income. Gotta know the take and who might be skimming off the top. Security guards for bases and laundromats and pawn stores and bars, because you can't trust criminals not to steal. Plumbers and electricians and waitresses and cooks for sprawling bases underground. People who know to keep their mouths shut and their heads down. An entire underground economy right next to yours. Sometimes quite literally. 3 months after leaving prison, I disappeared into that underground economy. Tried giving the straight and narrow a try, but it didn't work. The power nullification collar around my neck was removed within an hour of my leaving. The next 7 years as a criminal were frustrating. You can guess that an individual with my power was rather in demand. I did everything from rooting out spies to security to B&E. Not that I was ever an official mask. I always declined those kinds of jobs. Getting into a villain team and making a name for yourself is just asking for a cape to develop a rivalry and chase you around, demanding that you become part of their rogues gallery and calling you their nemesis. It never ends then. What's the difference between a criminal power and a mask? Funny you should ask. Some don't think there's a difference, that every criminal power is a mask. Most of those people are idiots. As though the kid who has a useless power and shoplifts from their local store is the same as 𝒓𝒃. Different people have different definitions, but I would say it's a matter of infamy and intent. Masks want the name, the fame, and fear that comes with being known not just by the police, but the public too. Sure, some powers are so powerful that they get the name anyway. That kid who could fly and nearly rivaled Union in strength and durability, who tore up his town because he didn't know how to take no. What did they call him? Kid Savage? He just needed a proper spanking, I figure. Didn't kill anyone, but the public was so scared of him they made him a mask from day one. Yeah, some don't get a choice, but most who get the fame want it. On the other hand, your average criminal power just wants the money and to pay off their debts. None of them want the heat bothering capes brings. Not to say capes won't jump on you if they know a power is in play. But there's a difference between the flashy jobs a mask pulls off, hitting a bank in broad daylight, multiple jewelry stores, or heck, a kidnapping, and the kind of crimes professional criminals do. We'd rather wait until night, sneak into a store and take everything they have, than crash through the front door. It's that mindset that forced me to take 7 years to pay off the debts I'd accrued. Turning down the big flashy jobs, the high-paying, high-risk ones, for the steady and safe, is how I stayed out of prison until I was done. All my debts paid, or the masks I owed, either dead or locked up once more. Finally, I was free to do my own thing. So long as I didn't alert the government, so long as I never showed up on their databases. That's when I changed my face. Getting a new identity these days is harder than ever. You can't just have plastic surgery and call it a day. It doesn't work that way, not anymore. Big Brother has all of us on the line, and the Powers Defense Act means any exhibition of ability, even something as innocuous as mine, is registered and our details taken. When you get caught, they take even more. Facial image and bone structure, pupil, fingerprints, DNA, mystical aura, gait, and power wavelength. Even spiritual resonance, supposedly, though that might be a rumor. Still, if you know the right people and take it slow, you can get away with a lot. Just because they have all that data doesn't mean your average cop on the street has access to it. Heck, most capes can't swing their hand and grab that information. If you change things up, make minor corrections, take it slow, you're fine. Too bad I didn't take my own advice. The first thing I did was go for a complete physical makeover. Hard work at the gym, some help from a power-based personal trainer, and a lot of food shifted me from a tired old man with sticks for arms to a well-built, middle-aged silver fox. Add on facial sculpting, bone lengthening, and some movement training, and I was sorted physically. at least under cursory examination. Getting documentation for the new me wasn't difficult either. You'd be surprised how many deaths are never reported, bodies never properly issued a death certificate. Then, of course, are the even deeper covers. Wholesale identities created and carefully nurtured over decades, school reports physically altered and added to, minor mental manipulation to ensure people remember a person who never existed. The kind of false identity operation that you occasionally hear about in places like the hourly report, but who never get further publicity. The expensive kind. I didn't get that kind of identity. Didn't have the funds, though I got something nearly as good. After all that, it was just a matter of introducing Lenny Friedman to high society. After years of being poor and down on my luck, I was done with all that. If I was going to be a criminal, I figured I'd go all the way. The first step was getting appropriate clothing. In this case, 3 or 4 outfits that said rich, but didn't scream trying hard. That took most of my funds, even with a little gentle persuasion to get into the right places and be seen by the right stylists. You wouldn't believe how expensive a shirt and pants combo could be. Take them. I could, but why would I? That would just hurt the salesperson who helped me. They track everything in places like that. A single missing shirt could easily see them fired. I might be a criminal, but I'm no asshole. Anyway, I only needed to meet the right people. Using my power to get an invitation was easy. After that, all I had to do was socialize until I found the right target. He came swanning in one evening while I was trying to get laid. Hey, I'm a man. And no, I've never needed to use my power for that. I know you don't believe me. It's true, though. Power, the non-mutagen kind, and confidence can get you quite far. I might have nudged people into telling me their secrets, telling me what they really wanted, what they desired, but I never nudged them into bed. Doesn't matter, really. You'd be surprised how many women are just looking for someone who is willing to listen to them, and once they've poured out their hearts and not been judged for it, they're more than willing to slip out of a dress or two to show their gratitude. Trust me. Just listen. Anyway, the mark was 𝒍𝒑 Sarantopoulos. Old school money that came from shipping, though they had expanded over the years. He was dissatisfied, though, being the 3rd son. After all, his older brothers were running the business. And him? Nothing but a wastrel, or so his family thought. He tried his hand at investing, trying to make a name, a fortune for himself. Power tech, to be specific. But you know how it is with power-based advancements. 2/3 of the time, it only works for those they build it for. The other third isn't replicable at all. Leaves a fraction of a fraction that can actually change society. End of the day, investing in power tech is a crapshoot. You can expect thousands of failures before you succeed. But that one success? If you get it, you could make a fortune. But the trials and travails of power tech investments wasn't something George could explain to his family. Not to a family that had built their fortune the old-fashioned way, one ship at a time. And not even old ships, where a journey across the world could end with ships capsized, but ships during the stable years, before powers became so common and global commerce was simple. So here George was, in New York, frozen out of all the family business decisions, and only with access to his personal fortune of $40 million. I know, cry me a river. But that was George. He really did expect people to do so. I guess when you fall from having access to billions, 40 million feels like being penniless. Worse, most of his hangers-on and acquaintances just wanted to pitch him a new power tech project, a new business, or even a party they wanted him to grace, along with his usual retinue of babes. Luckily for George, that wasn't what I wanted him for. No, all I needed the schmuck for was his apartment. Sliding up to him at the party, after ditching my initial target, was simple enough. I had to gently persuade a few of his retinue to make scarce, what with their jealously guarded positions as leeches threatened. I guess like can recognize like. Once I made friendly with George, I just needed to put a little pressure on him when we were alone, and bam! I had an invitation to stay for a few days at his apartment while I settled into the Big Apple in style. Of course, a few days would become months, but he didn't need to know that. Once I'd settled in for a few days, sending him on another investment research mission to Antigua was simple enough. Of course, I'm not completely heartless. I knew some of the criminals down there were looking for a sucker who might take some of their power tech public, so I figured I'd kill two birds with one stone. Even better, since it was an actual investment opportunity, he was going to be gone for a while, and he handed me the keys and his public blessing to make use of the space while he was gone. Everything on the up and up, no one to question why I was at George's place. Next came funds. That was simple enough to acquire with the right address, attendance at the right parties, and even throwing some of the right events once I was properly introduced. After all, now I was a known factor, an individual they could trust. When I actually helped put two and two together in the same room, got a deal sorted, well, let's say things happened fast. No, I won't say what that first deal was. It's none of your business, and it was a personal type. As I said, I'm not an asshole. There was money to be made being the man between, knowing who had what to sell, who had the right interest. Other people could do it, of course. Other people did it. But none of them had my power. Of course, I'd learned by then that all I had to do was push a little. The nudges no one noticed were the most effective, not the mental shoves that sent them sprawling, chasing after their sense of self. 5 minutes with Zola? Just 5? For me? Golf? Sure I can play. You do need a fourth, right? Because I know just the person. Tickets to the Met? I might be able to wrangle you a pair, but you have to tell me what you and 𝗧𝒏𝒐 were doing last night. Gossip, innuendo, connections, social proof when I moved out and got my own place, with an appropriately lavish, well-attended party. Had an upcoming pop starlet do the entertainment. Had the cosmic raver, you remember him, don't you? Former cape-turned-musician, now a DJ and light show. And enough alcohol and food to drown an orphanage. We partied for 3 days, and everyone who was anyone came over. The money was good. The money was very good, especially after decades of scrimping and hiding and not being able to use my power properly. I should have stopped there. No one cares if you nudge a billionaire to invest in a millionaire's pet project, or if you put two good-looking socialites together, or get an up-and-coming actress access to her future sugar daddy. After all I did was nudge. The rest was up to them. I should have stopped there. But the thing about hanging around with the ultra-wealthy, all that money that seemed enough at first, it wasn't. I understood George's point of view more than ever. I wanted more. Ever more. Greed. That was my downfall. How bloody pedestrian. It started out innocently enough. An older lady wanting in company but not funds. We became friends. Dolores had the best gossip and great connections, so we hung out. Once a week over high tea, she would tell me all about high society, and I would sup on cucumber sandwiches at an exclusive club near Central Park. It didn't cost me much, and she didn't mind if I arrived hungover either. Then she broke her hip. Old people and falls, that most dangerous of events. She had no one, at least no one who would take care of her. They wanted her to hire a nursing aide, maids, all that jazz. Throw money at the problem, not feelings. Perhaps I shouldn't have, but I took her in. She just needed a place to stay, someone to watch over her, pick things up. It wasn't hard, and I was switching stages in my career anyway. No more wild parties, no more long nights of revelry. More dinner parties and galas, smoking rooms and golf courses, spas and tennis. A healthier and simpler lifestyle for someone at my age. A better class of people, too. So I cared for her. It gave me an excuse for the transition. Cut out the parties, spend more time at home. She needed help, needed company. But my power is influencing minds and emotions, not the body. As much as I could help, I couldn't stop the turning of the clock. I never exploited Dolores. Let me be clear. Didn't even need to use my power on her. We were just friends. When she died, she willed me her place upstate. Boy, was that a mess. She had lawyers all set up to deal with her vultures of a family. Smart cookie, Dolores was. Figured since they weren't willing to spend time with her in the end, she owed them little. Not that everyone didn't get something, but it wasn't what they wanted. The lawyers dealt with the majority. Those who weren't discouraged, I had my power. Moving into the compound was a thing. Sprawling across multiple acres, it had extensive grounds, a large main building, multiple smaller ones, gardens galore. I hired some old cons, people I knew from the before time who needed a leg up. Powers who wouldn't mind living in a nice residence and doing some basic yard work. The fact that they also acted as security when needed was a bonus. Really. I just intended to help out some of my old friends, my old connections. We aren't a criminal organization. Hiring them, giving them a chance to have a well-paying job, that's the least we can do. After all, isn't that the point of serving time? That we've paid back whatever debt there might be to society? So why can we never have real jobs? I settled in, got back into the swing of things. Saw people, helped them fix their problems. Men, women, young, old. My reputation as a fixer had grown, warped a little. Some came to my new residence because they thought I could put them on the right course for success, for love. Sometimes I could. Often I couldn't, at least not the way they thought. But the successes were my bane, because they left happy. And if the wealthy are missing any one thing in aggregate, it's that. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying anything as trite as money doesn't buy happiness. The poor can tell you it can certainly buy certain kinds of joy. The contentment of a full stomach. The peace of knowing you've got a roof over your head next month. The joy of buying a birthday gift for someone you love. Money can buy certain kinds of joy. The problem comes when you've bought everything it can. When everything else is taken care of, when you have everything you could need, then the one thing you can't buy is ever so stark. It's like the missing piece in a jigsaw. Frustrating, itch-inducing, maddening. You'd pay anything to fill it, but for once, you can't. So what do? You search, you look, you try. When the rumors of a man who can fill that hole appear, you look him up. It probably didn't help that I didn't want to deal with the rich at first. Every man has a price, they say. I'm rather embarrassed to say mine was only $1 million. $1 million to see Alexander Locke, billionaire mogul, the devil to many. The man with 2 ex-wives, a dozen children, and countless girlfriends. Wealthy scion of an oil baron family, and an even luckier entrepreneur to have backed the family when they had just emerged. Billionaire, philanthropist, self-labeled genius, and most of all, repressed homosexual. What was I supposed to say when the briefcase came in, carried by his pair of bodyguards, and he looked all kinds of excited and eager? What was I supposed to say? Your problem is you can't love anyone till you truly love yourself? I can tell you what you need to do, but you won't like it? Your family messed you up, and you've got to let all of that go? I did. All of those things. In gentle and firmer ways over the course of nearly 3 hours. But of course, he didn't believe me. Demanded I fix it without him actually doing any real work. Holding true to the truth during that first meeting took everything I had. I'm not a good person. I told you that. I'm a weak man. I stayed honest for one meeting, held true to the truth, didn't utilize my power beyond nudging him here and there to try to accept what I had to say. Even if I got him to agree to a sentence, had him saying yes and yes and yes, at that last moment he'd always balk. Couldn't wouldn't see the truth for what it was. Wouldn't speak it out loud. Not to me, not to himself. So we ended that first meeting with everyone unhappy. But I was $1 million richer anyway. The second meeting, another $1 million, and I did what he wanted, what he demanded I do, because he knew I could. Yeah, he'd figured it out. With that much money, with all the power he had, working out something like that wasn't hard. So I did. I made him happy. It wouldn't last. It couldn't. But the drugs, the change to his brain chemistry, the basic programming could be tweaked. All that time learning, studying, practicing had some practical effects. It worked for about a month, but such changes can't last. The human body, the human mind, knows how to protect itself. Yes, even against unearned happiness and contentment. 1 month became 3 weeks. That became 10 days, then 5, 2. In the end, he chose to move near my compound. Bought the place next door so he could just wander over. I'll admit, the changes Alexander made to my property weren't entirely against my will. But my other patients, those who needed help, wanted some form of closure or therapy or just for me to do my old job. They enjoyed the extra space, the buildings that Alexander set up after a while, the hidden nooks for other kinds of pleasure. More than that, the patients who wanted more, needed more care, came and came in numbers. Stayed with Alexander at first, then in the guest houses he created. Like called to like, and those like Alexander, who had a gaping hole that needed filling, appeared faster and faster. Funny that I managed to fill a few too, even by accident. But I was no longer using my power in nudges. I was hiding it, of course, in meditation practices, in seances, and aromatherapy and yoga. In moments of zen forced upon others, while my power slowly dug in and made them happy. For some people, the company they kept, the community we created, filled a hole. Going out, doing good, giving money to others and seeing those real-world effects. There's a whole world of difference between donating $1 million to an art gallery that barely needs the money and going to a homeless shelter and helping cook the food those very people would eat later. Put you in touch with others, and then, well, often they'd actually spend more money anyway. Don't get me wrong, I wasn't doing all this charitable work, all this yoga and meditation and awareness practice, just because I'm a good person. Frankly, building something that benefited my patients was easier than taking their money and using my powers. I couldn't be everywhere all the time, and I was still trying to hide. The fear of being caught and being sent to prison again, of having it all taken away, still existed. How much good has been done, do you think, for the wrong reasons? All through human history? A lot, I would bet. It doesn't matter. I did good with my organization. Not like the Capes, saving the world or fighting masks, but we put in new wells, fixed up old buildings and shattered neighborhoods after the Capes were done with their city-spanning fights. We rehabilitated masks with good powers, got them jobs that benefited from their gifts or their interests. We did good. Not that anyone cares. Yeah, maybe I'm a little bitter. Because when you all came and tore down the Institute, scattered the community and drove those who had found themselves a place, you never once stopped to look at the good we did, or the destruction you caused. And for what? A half-dozen billionaires, a score of multimillionaires who were getting exactly what they asked for. A bunch of others who were never exploited, but were there because they'd found a community. All to save the fools who, even after they were warned it wasn't what they needed, demanded satisfaction. Yeah, no. I'm the mask here, I'm the villain. Oh, poor little rich men and women, boo-hoo-hoo. Typical. Oh, why have I not asked who was the Judas who betrayed me to the Capes in the end? It doesn't matter. I betrayed myself first, and everything since that moment was delayed reckoning. I knew better than to take the money, to let Alexander move in. to use my power in that way. I knew better. Everything else, it was a consequence of my choices. What? I had to do all the meditation and mushrooms and yoga classes too. I had to learn those things about my patients and, finally, myself. I'm not a good person, but I'm no mask, no matter what all of you think. The Legion came in one bright Sunday morning, all shiny and new and excited to smash everything apart. They were surprised when there was no such fight. No one tried to fight them, not even me. Years of development was destroyed one sunny morning, but mostly metaphorically. Physically, the compound is still there. I hear it's a theme park now. The actual death of the Institute took 2 years, mostly because that's how slow the court system moves. I held on to hope, that we could put things together again, right till the end of the trial, right till the judgment and the sentence. That's when I ran. You don't need to know how I did it. Let's just say that knowing the end was coming meant I had a lot of time to plan. Time to move money offshore into accounts you can't touch or don't know about. Time to make contacts with governments and individuals who accept things as they are and not the way they want it to be. Time to put plans in place and build the compound anew. Funny how so many of my victims came and helped of their own free will. So here we are, doing this interview so you can tell your readers about me, about the new compound and my cult. Here's what you need to know. We'll try to fix you if you can be fixed. We'll try to give you peace if that's what you want. But remember, what you want is not what you need sometimes. In the end, we will give you what you want if you insist. Because I'm not a mask, but I'm not a good man. I'm weak, and I like money. So make sure you can pay. The end. This has been The Cultist by Tao Wong, performed by P.J. Morgan. Copyright 2023 by Tao Wong. Production copyright 2023 by Starlit Publishing.